is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting NORML.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. Then it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to think and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes, and welcome. It is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2012, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to Rolla J Studios here in beautiful Potland, Oregon, where I'm dealing with all sorts of problems with my soundboard right at the moment, so excuse me if I'm a little bit distracted. But joining us also here in the studio, we've got Brian Wilson, Brian the Red, hanging out there back in the Pirates Cove, running a few of the buttons for us, so thanks for joining us here. Also, Wiz Kaliko in the studio, hanging out on camera 4, so glad to have Wiz in the house. And joining us from our virtual studio in beautiful Grastoria, Oregon, is the lovely Cannabis Carrie. How you doing, Carrie?
I'm doing great. I guess all these, the last few years, I've got sort of accustomed to the applause that comes after my name that I can't hear now.
Yeah, I'm having all sorts of issues here with the recording on the computer side here, just blowing up when I push a couple of buttons. So I'm trying to fix that. We'll get that fixed during the break. But coming up next on the show, we have got a great Tuesday show lined up for you. Normally, Todd Armstrong would be joining us. He's out on the road doing some stand-up comedy. So taking his place today, joining us at half past the hour, is Paul Armentano, the Deputy Director of NORML. He'll be joining us to give us a review of the top 10 events in marijuana of 2011. Then at the end of the show, I've got a radical rant. We need to talk a little bit about Portland's own Paul Stanford, who's been written up by the Associated Press. All sorts of controversy involved in that. We've also got a daily toker tune for Electric Tuesday. I just like the name of the tune. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. I'm just going to save the surprise for later. But before we get to all that, we've got our hemp headlines with Cannabis Carrie, our senior news editor. And what do we have in the news today, Carrie?
Well, today we're going to cover a very important Supreme Court case. I do love covering these kind of cases. Also, we're going to go to the Mendocino Forest where they're looking for some help for cleanup. And we're also going to look at Colorado, who has added their voice in asking the feds for a reclassification on marijuana. We'll tell you all about that coming up in the hemp headlines.
All right. All that and more coming up today on NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation. Also, want to remind you that we got other great shows that you can check out on the NORML Network. We are on air 24/7, 365. On today's lineup, you'll get to hear Cannabis Cure UK, and we'll have more coming up after this. You're listening to NORML Show Live. Be right back.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Weedmaps.com. I'm Radical Russ from NORML. In my job as outreach coordinator, I travel every month, and when I'm on the road, I need a fast, accurate way to find the medical marijuana dispensaries in the area. So I turn to Weedmaps.com. Weedmaps.com has the best dispensary locator online or on your mobile device. Search by zip code or let Weedmaps find you, and in seconds you'll have the addresses, phone numbers, and customer service reviews for the medical marijuana dispensaries in the local area. Weedmaps.com also has a section devoted to helping you find a doctor who understands and recommends medical marijuana under your state's law. You can even check prices on the Medical Marijuana Stock Exchange. Coming soon, you'll even be able to find the listings of Normal attorneys and chapters, local head shops and grow shops, and the best weed-friendly businesses. Weedmaps.com has the information you need to be an informed cannabis consumer. Visit weedmaps.com today, a proud sponsor of the Normal Network.
Inhaling deeply of the sacred smoke.
Normal Show Live. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges. Hey, Mo! Here, Mo!
That's what I need. When I smoke it, satisfaction guaranteed.
Hi, this is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of Normal. This year, the Drug Czar's office has a $60 million budget for advertising their Reefer Madness propaganda. We here at Normal don't have that kind of money, but we've got two weapons for fighting back. Your donations and the truth. Please, make a donation to Normal so we can continue to expand this podcast and our other media campaigns. Even a donation of $4.20 can help. Visit us on the web at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL, NORML. Thank you for caring and sharing.
That's what I need. When I smoke it, satisfaction guaranteed.
Yo, what's good? This is Be Real of Cypress Hill chilling on Normal Show Live. Legalize it.
Hi, I'm Radical Russ. One of the best things about marijuana is the wonderful aroma. But when you travel a lot like I do, that aroma becomes a suspicious smell. That's why I endorse Stealth-Products.com, the leaders in smell-proof containers. From smell-proof vacuum bags to smell-proof backpacks and duffel bags, all the way to smell-proof digital safes, Stealth-Products.com has you covered. Stealth-Products.com brings you safe, secure, odorless layers of protection with activated carbon fiber. Backpacks and duffel bags are simple black so as not to attract attention with a logo or a flashy design. Now, nothing is perfectly odor controlled from the detection of drug dogs, but with proper vigilance, containers from Stealth-Products.com will help you avoid nosy humans.
You're now listening to Illit Beats.
Stealth-Products.com. Stealth-Products.com.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's Normal News with Cannabis Carrie.
Man whose BMW was destroyed because not one but two different trained drug-sniffing dogs marked the car for hidden marijuana, but neither of them marked the same place, and ultimately there was no marijuana found. Today we're going to look at a case before the Supreme Court that includes a question about drug-sniffing dogs. The case comes out of Florida, and the question is whether a police dog's behavior outside of a house gives the officers the right to get a search warrant for illegal drugs inside the home, or is a dog's sniff a warrant for constitutional search. The Florida Supreme Court said the dog's ability to detect marijuana inside a home from the outside of a closed front door crosses a constitutional line. The Florida State Attorney, Pam Bondi, is hoping that the Supreme Court of the United States will overturn that ruling. Law experts all agree that the highest court in the land will, in fact, hear this very important case and make a ruling. The case is being monitored by law enforcement agencies across the country that use dogs in the search for illegal substances. The dog in question, Frankie, is now retired but is responsible for the seizure of more than 2.5 tons of marijuana and $4.9 million of drug-contaminated money. The Chocolate Lab spent most of his career in airports. The U.S. Supreme Court has heard 4 dog-sniffing cases before. 2 of the previous cases involved the use of drug dogs after a traffic stop, and one involved an airport luggage claim, and the other one involved a package in transit. If they argue this case, it will be the first one that includes a dog and a private residence. Again and again, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the home is entitled to greater privacy than roads or public places. The justice ruled in 2001 that police could not use thermal imaging technology to detect marijuana grows from outside the home, since the equipment could also detect lawful activity, such as intimate details about when the occupants were bathing. And it is already well established that officers can knock on your front door, but if you refuse to open up and talk with them, the officers will need a warrant to get in, and to get a warrant, they need evidence of a crime. The case we will be monitoring is called Florida versus J. Deans, and it led to Julius J. Deans being arrested back in 2006 for trafficking after police found 179 marijuana plants in his home when the drug dog marked his front door by laying down in front of it. His attorney challenged the search, saying it was unconstitutional intrusion into his home by law enforcement. The evidence, which is the plants, were thrown out in a lower court, then reversed by an appeals court, but then the Florida Supreme Court sided with the original judge. Now, there is a decision conflict with Florida's highest court since numerous previous rulings decided that a dog sniff does not constitute a search. The interesting thing here is that unlike the thermal imaging ruling, a dog is not finding out about any other legal activity. So it is an interesting case, and we will be monitoring it.
You already know how I feel about these drug-sniffing dogs, and we've done so many stories about this in the past, but let me go into this again. First of all, we have to separate how do I feel about how the Supreme Court should rule versus how they probably will rule. Because when it comes to drugs, that's the exception to the Bill of Rights. If it's a drug case, well, it's just druggies. It's not like they have rights or anything. They're criminals. They were committing a crime. They don't deserve any rights. So I'm not very sanguine on the chances of us getting a good ruling out of the Roberts Court. However, we should. We should be getting this ruling because there's nothing more intrusive here than posting dogs outside of our homes with the idea that we're going to try to find out if the occupants are involved in some sort of drug-related crime, get the excuse we need so we can batter down their doors and seize their property and terrorize their kids. But the thing that galls me the most about this is how in the discussion of these drug-sniffing dogs from the side of the courts, from the reporters covering it, et cetera, it's just taken as a given that these are somehow scientific instruments, these dogs, that they're somehow these infallible indicators that prove somebody is involved with drugs. When I have shown you story after story, study after study, showing how drug dogs false alert all the time. Carrie did the story yesterday on the guy's BMW getting torn apart because they thought the drug dog was marking it multiple times, and again, they did not find any drugs. I've given you the study from UC Davis. This was an interesting study. They put together a test area with 4 separate rooms in it. Now, in the 4 separate rooms, there was a combination of factors that could exist. Either a room had a flag in it, a red flag, literally a red flag in it, to indicate that, yes, there are drugs in this room, or it didn't have a red flag to say, yes, there were drugs in the room. And a room could either actually have drugs in it or not have any drugs in it at all, right? So there's 4 combinations. A room that has a flag and has drugs, has a flag, doesn't have drugs, has drugs, doesn't have a flag, has no flag, has no drugs, right? The 4 possible combinations. And given this, they led all these drug dogs with their handlers through to find out where these drug dogs would alert. And they found over 200 times these drug dogs were giving false alerts, and especially giving false positives when their owner thought the room had drugs in it. That is, the red flag rooms were more likely to get marked than the rooms without the red flags, indicating a possibility here that the drug dogs are reacting to the subtle cues from the handler. Dogs naturally, instinctively, based in their DNA, want to please humans, want to please their master. And if they're getting the cue that they're going to get a reward, they're going to get a treat, they're going to be praised if they mark something from their owner, whether subconscious or overt. And let's not even talk about how many times the cops here are purposefully making the drug dogs alert because they've seen a Grateful Dead sticker or the driver has dark skin. They come up with the excuse they need to harass them. Let's not even go there. Let's say they're being absolutely acting in good faith. They still can subconsciously cue those dogs to alert on a scent that may or may not actually be there. So for the Supreme Court to be weighing this issue as if we're talking about infrared, as if we're talking about some sort of scientific technology that can actually be proven, that can actually be tested in a laboratory, we are talking about dogs who want to please their masters, and there's no way anybody's civil rights should have to depend on whether or not a dog gets it right.
And the state of Colorado has been very progressive when it comes to medical marijuana regulations. They have pages and pages of codes that describe every process from growing to transporting to processing and distributing. But now the agency that oversees much of that regulation, the Colorado Department of Revenue, has asked the DEA to change the definition of marijuana. The Colorado Department of Revenue's executive head, Barbara Broll, wrote a letter last month asking the DEA to reschedule marijuana so that the definition of the plant includes potential medicinal value. As a Schedule I substance defined by the federal government, marijuana is considered highly dangerous with a high level of addiction potential and zero medicinal value, something that is obviously discongruent with the states that have passed medical marijuana laws. The letter was expected. It was part of a law that was passed last summer in Colorado in the legislature that required the state to ask for the rescheduling by the end of 2011. Brohl's letter detailed Colorado's regulation for medical marijuana sellers and argued that the current federal laws that make any distribution and possession illegal make her job as a state regulator of the state's medical marijuana laws difficult to administer. The letter suggests that moving marijuana from a Schedule I substance to a Schedule II category that keeps the dangerous warning about the substance and all the controls but allows some medicinal value would be the answer. Even with the move, marijuana would still be in a class of drugs like methamphetamines, opium, and cocaine, still highly addictive but with some medical value. A Schedule II categorization would also allow doctors to prescribe marijuana but still leave the strict controls on it for the feds, a compromise that seems obvious to many but has been lost on the DEA in the past. Governor Gregoire from Washington and Governor Chafee from Rhode Island have also sent letters to the DEA asking for the reclassification. The DEA has repeatedly either denied or ignored similar requests for the last few decades. If Colorado and the increasing pressure from other state officials do get the DEA to change that classification, it may still mean a host of other complicated issues for Colorado and other medical marijuana states. The tight controls of a Schedule II classification would not allow patients to grow and cultivate their own medicine.
Yep, that's exactly where it's headed. And folks, work with me here for a second. You remember the Price is Right rangefinder game? You remember this? A big old board with a bunch of numbers running along the side. And then they have the little rangefinder, which has a little high point or a high point and a low point, and it'd go up and it'd go doot, 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 higher, higher, higher. Oh, lower, lower, the audience would call out, trying to get that, find the price and, see if it'll match in between the high point and the low point. Every time we talk about rescheduling marijuana, I kind of feel like we're playing the Price is Right rangefinder game. Like, how close can we get to legalization without actually getting to that point? How far can we move the rangefinder to help us without scaring the squares, without worrying the people that are afraid of marijuana? And this moving it to Schedule II, which, you can't be against it. And I know everybody always says, we got to go baby steps. But my problem is that babies can only walk so far. Babies get tired and babies fall down. It's time to start taking some adult steps here. Moving to Schedule II, as Carrie points out, just gets us to where marijuana is like methamphetamine or cocaine. You can still be severely busted for having it. It does allow for more scientific inquiry into it. It does allow for doctors to be able to prescribe it along the lines of how they can prescribe cocaine and methamphetamine. So if you want marijuana to be medical and tightly restricted and controlled as strongly as we control meth and cocaine and other Schedule II drugs, then I suppose this is a good thing. But it's time that we start talking about getting marijuana off the schedule altogether. If we continue down this path of nibbling around the edges of medicalization and trying to keep marijuana in this narrow medical category, then we're going to end up with marijuana that's just medical. We're going to end up with marijuana you have to get from the pharmacy, that you have to have a doctor's permission to be able to acquire, and a prescription that's federally tracked, and the guy has a federal license, and marijuana is treated worse than we treat plutonium, for God's sake. Now, it's time now to stop this charade of trying to take every use of marijuana and squeeze it into this narrow medical gap here that is laden with restrictions, that is laden with people's framing of what medicine is and how medicine should be used, and leaves people like me with the same moral argument as people who chug cough syrup to get off. No, it's time that we start moving the marijuana argument back to the alcohol argument, back to the cigarette argument. If we've got two substances here with absolutely no medical value, there's some argument for the medical value of alcohol, I understand, but come on now. Substances that are not at all thought of as medicine, and some substances that people easily recognize can be abused and people can have a bad relationship with them, and yet we still don't lock up alcoholics. We still don't lock up tobacco smokers, chain smokers, even if they're destroying their lungs, even if they're ruining their lives with alcohol. We recognize that people have a right to do with themselves and their lives as they choose, so long as they're not harming others. And if we can allow that if we can allow that for alcohol, if we can allow that for tobacco, then we have to allow that for cannabis. And to do otherwise is to deny people like me, like Kaliko, like Brian, like Carrie, to deny people like us the same rights that alcohol drinkers, the same rights that cigar smokers get to enjoy. And I think that's my lesson to turn my alarm off, because it's 4:20, folks. Gotta take a break. The Android was a little ahead of the schedule there, Kaliko.
The Iowa caucus is coming up. Got to get prepared, guys.
Oh, that's it. The Iowa caucus. All right, We'll talk about that too. We'll be back after this.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support Normal Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Alternative Medical Choices offers healthcare the way it should be. Easy to access, patient-centered, team-based, and quality-focused. We offer a variety of natural, affordable healthcare treatment options like primary care, group acupuncture, massage, and assistance with OMNP registration. As a patient, you will have a team of experts working with you to make you the best you can be. Call Alternative Medical Choices at 503-288-5579 or check us out on the web at altmedchoices.com.
Wow, great plan, boys.
The Phillies love you, Dewey.
Yeah, if I wasn't a married man with a good head on my shoulders, I don't know what I'd do. You gotta get back out there, Dewey. They're going crazy. All right, let me splash some water on my face. I'll be right back. Okay. Hurry up.
Get out of here, Dewey.
What are y'all doing in here?
We're smoking reefer. And you don't want no part of this shit.
You're smoking reefers?
Yeah, of course we are. Can't you smell it?
No, Sam. I can't.
Come on, Dewey. Join the party.
No, Dewey. You don't want this. Get out of here.
You know what? I don't want no hangover. I can't get no hangover.
It doesn't give you a hangover.
Well, I'll get addicted to it or something?
It's not habit forming.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I don't want to overdose on it.
You can't OD on it.
It's not going to make me want to have sex, is it?
It makes sex even better.
It sounds kind of expensive.
It's the cheapest drug there is. You don't want it.
I think I kind of want it.
Okay, but just this once. Come on in.
What do I do?
Like this.
If I were to tell you that in America, right now, over 1 million children sell marijuana, what would you think? Would you think that any public policy that creates over 1 million teenage marijuana dealers needs to be re-examined and possibly amended? You would not be alone. The members of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, have been working since 1970 to reform marijuana laws such that responsible adults, not children, sell and use marijuana. Isn't it high time to reform America's misguided marijuana laws? This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML in Washington, D.C. Only concerned citizens can effectively end the federal government's nearly 70-year-old prohibition on responsible adult marijuana sales and use. Want to know more about how you can help? Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's popular and informative webpage at normal, NORML.org.
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Electric Tuesday, our segment featuring the best of modern electric music in the genres of dance, new age, house, and experimental. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Normal Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
All right, welcome back. Cannabis Cure UK is still out and about, getting his studio all reset up. He's, kind of going through New Year like I am, adding some new equipment. So he'll have your Electric Tuesday tune probably coming up next week. So this week, I get to pick the Electric Tuesday tune. And usually when I try to find these tunes, I try to find something that'll find within the theme of, with marijuana, right? Or, something like that, like getting high or freedom or revolution, something. But today I just got high and I found the title of this song to be very amusing. And then I listened to the sample and it made me laugh. And maybe that's just because every time I think of music and bees, it reminds me of John Belushi. So this could be one of those tracks that's not so entertaining, maybe even annoying if you're not high. So you can let me know in the comments or in the chat. Here it is. It's from Jam Master A, and it's not Jam Master J, right, from Run DMC, not Jam Master J. It's Jam Master, one word, Jam Master A. And the song's called Funky Jump B. Jam Master A resides in Vancouver and Asia. All of Asia? Wow. He's the first Asian DJ, artist, producer who created a new style of Oriental trance. He released a top dance single called Bells of Tiananmen and another one called One Night in Beijing, which reached the top 10 sales chart and dance chart in Europe. You can check him out on MySpace. He's at myspace.com/JamMasterA. And here it is. This is Funky Jump B on your Electric Tuesday Daily Toker Tunes.
As High Times Senior Cultivation Editor, I'm often called into the field and asked to sample or even identify exotic strains of marijuana in their natural habitat. Now, for the first time, I've compiled more than 120 of my favorite strains into this single field guide designed to fit into your pocket as you travel the world in search of your favorite plant. From a friend's closet grow room to the wilds of Northern California, this single guide covers all of today's best-known strains, plus heirlooms and throwbacks, including High Times quality photos and information on each variety's genetic heritage and growing characteristics, plus my personal notes on aroma, flavor, and potency. So this is Danny Danko, author of the official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, wishing you good times and great ganja.
The official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains is available at hightimes.com and finer bookstores.
Tune in to the Normal Network for High Times Free Weed, featuring High Times Senior Cultivation Editor Danny Danko, answering your grow questions, with premiere episodes every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern and replays at 3 a.m. and 9 a.m. on the Normal Network and online at hightimes.com/freeweed.
Which of you are ready to admit to having used marijuana in the past? And they want us to go around and ask each of you. Senator Kerry, yes or no? Yes. Okay. Senator Edwards?
Yes.
Senator Lieberman?
Well, I have a reputation for giving unpopular answers at Democratic debates. I never use marijuana. Sorry.
I think you'd probably be a lot cooler if you had, Senator.
Smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine.
Normal has been the place to go for the latest studies and news on marijuana science, policy, and activism. For over a decade, one man at Normal has written and reviewed more studies and news stories regarding marijuana than most anyone on the planet. First as senior policy analyst and now as deputy director, Normal's Paul Amintano has written for major newspapers, academic journals, and magazines on the subject of cannabis and is frequently requested as an expert witness in the courtroom. His knowledge and experience are an amazing asset to the cannabis community. Available to you now in a segment we call Behind the Headlines with Paul Armentano.
All right, welcome to the new year, Paul Armentano. Thanks for joining us here on Normal Show Live.
Good to be here, Russ. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And, 2012 is going to be an amazing year with what we have going on as far as initiatives in a few states and more activism going on than any year that I can remember prior to that. But, we just finished up 2011. It had also a lot of notable moments. And part of this was a post that you put up on the Normal blog of the top 10 events that shaped marijuana policy. And I just thought we could begin the new year by looking back at the old one and seeing what we can learn from some of these events. So shall we go through them?
Sure, no problem.
All right. We're going to start from the bottom up like we do on top 10 lists. We note number 10, Delaware becomes the 16th state to legalize limited medical use of marijuana. What did you mean by limited medical use in that context?
Well, I think it's important to note, and you note this on your show all the time, that when we speak in strict terms of the medical use of marijuana, particularly on the East Coast, what we see are that legislators say, if you want medical marijuana, that's fine. What you're only going to get medical marijuana. And Delaware is one of these states where the law is written in such a way that unless you are a state-registered patient, you have one of a limited number of specific conditions, and unless you are getting your marijuana from the state, you are not protected under the law. Delaware's version of medical marijuana legalization is very, very different than what many of your listeners may right now recognize as medical marijuana legislation specific to states like California and Colorado. It's a very different model that was proposed in Delaware and a number of the eastern states.
Yeah, and I often like to say, we talk about having 16 medical marijuana states, but really it's more like we have about 6. And then the other 10 are pretty limited. There's all sorts of roadblocks and hurdles that are preventing these programs from working effectively. What do you think about that?
Oh, exactly. When we say 16 states in the District of Columbia, keep in mind we're talking about several states that have yet to even enact their programs. We're talking about states like Delaware and D.C. and New Jersey, where there is yet to be a single individual or resident of those areas that is afforded any legal protection to use cannabis as a medicine. So it's really a misnomer to say 16 states are a third of the country. You're correct. We're actually talking about a smaller total pool if we're talking about effective legislation.
Yeah. All right. Number 9 in the 2011 events, the state governors calling on the Obama administration to reclassify cannabis. And we saw this following a lot of these governors tucking tail and running when they got a stern letter. What was the effect? What's the fallout of this? Do you think this is going to go forward and that this suit by the governors is in good faith, or are they trying to save face?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, to me, this is in many ways a symbolic gesture. Individuals, groups including NORML, have called for rescheduling for decades now. The evidence has been there for decades now. All anyone has to do is actually read the report that the governors submitted. It's actually a fantastic report. Mitch Earlywine, who most of the podcast listeners should be familiar with, is a co-author of that report. There's hundreds of citations. The case can readily be made that marijuana does not fit the Schedule I criteria. I think there is symbolic importance now that we have governors of these states making the case as opposed to activists. But unfortunately, I'm not convinced that this is going to carry a whole lot of weight with the federal government regardless of who is making the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, speaking of Dr. Mitch, we talk to him every Wednesday in our Cannabis Science segment. We'll talk to him tomorrow. But one of the topics that we cover all the time is the use of cannabis as an adjunct therapy to other pharmaceuticals, specifically opioid painkillers. Our number 8 story of 2011 was how vaporized cannabis augments the analgesic effects of opiates in humans. That doesn't sound like something Pfizer or Merck really wants to hear.
This, in my opinion, is a very important story. It reaffirms anecdotally something patients have been telling us for decades, and I just think the significance of this finding. We've seen, and you've talked about on this show, regarding the overprescription or the explosion in prescription of opiate-based drugs and the adverse side effects associated with the widespread use of these drugs, including overdose deaths. And the idea that we can take these patients who have these chronic pain conditions and put them on a regimen where they can obtain the same level or better relief but use lower doses of these potentially fatal drugs by simply adding cannabis to the mix, I think it is a blockbuster story. It's something we're going to be talking about more and more in the future.
We're speaking with NORML Deputy Director Paul Armentano via Skype from the Bay Area in California. We're counting down the top 10 marijuana events of 2011, and number 7 comes in here with another state passing, statewide reform of marijuana laws. Connecticut decriminalizing cannabis possession offenses, and I'd like to just toot the horn of Connecticut NORML's activist and lobbyist Eric Williams, who was a major part of getting this pushed through. Do you think the fallout or the effect of Connecticut's decriminalization might even be a better story than Delaware becoming a medical marijuana state?
Oh, without question. Connecticut's decrim bill is a big deal. First of all, it took effect immediately. The law was signed at the end of June. It took effect in the beginning of July. So cannabis consumers in the Nutmeg State immediately received protection under the law because of this bill's passage. It's also important to remember that we had not had a state legislatively enact true decriminalization since the late 1970s. So there's been a 30-plus year gap where we had not had effective legislative efforts to decriminalize. Yes, Massachusetts decriminalized a few years ago, but that was done by voter initiative. Yes, Nevada passed a partial decriminalization bill in early 2000, but it wasn't true decriminalization. Marijuana possession in Nevada remains a misdemeanor offense, even though it's a minor misdemeanor. In Connecticut, they enacted true decriminalization. Possession of marijuana in the state of Connecticut now is no longer a criminal offense. There's no criminal record. There's no arrest. There's no jail time. It is simply an infraction payable by a $150 fine, and they also decriminalized paraphernalia. So it was a very important law. I think it's going to have widespread ramifications. I've already talked to the staff of governors in a number of other states who are looking at Connecticut and considering decriminalization policies in their own state.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. Studio audience loves that one. Have to make a trip to Connecticut one of these days. Our number 6 story for 2011, the largest state doctors association calls for legalizing cannabis. This would be the California Medical Association. And, going farther than the national AMA would go, even though they have, in 2009, given some room on medical marijuana, I imagine the California Medical Association would have some pull on the National Association, wouldn't it?
One would think, but, it's really hard to say when you're talking about these major institutions like the AMA. Change moves very, very slowly and almost grinds to a halt when you're talking about some of these larger institutions. But certainly on the statewide level, having the CMA, which represents some 35,000 physicians, coming out and saying, hey, look, we don't just support patients having access to marijuana. We support legalizing marijuana for all adults and regulating it in a manner like alcohol. That is tremendously important. It's symbolically important, but politically it's important as well. The CMA carries a lot of political clout, and they certainly can't be laughed off the way law enforcement has tried to laugh off some of these other organizations that have come out in the past in favor of legalization.
Yeah, and I like how in their coverage of this and how they came to their decision is from a public health standpoint. It's almost like they pointed out that the biggest harm from marijuana was getting busted with it.
They did, and it's really interesting for me, this report, on a personal level. One of the co-authors of this report, several years ago, I had a private meeting with, and we could not have been on different sides of this issue. And to see that in a few years, this individual has gone from opposing legalization to actually co-authoring a CMA review paper in favor of legalization really shows that the tide is turning and that we're making significant progress in the court of public opinion.
Oh, absolutely. All right, we're still counting down the top 10 marijuana events of 2011. Our number 5 one, a headline that makes it almost every year, it seems. Marijuana prosecutions for 2010 near a record high, second only to the year before. So a slight decline, but statistically not much of a decline. What does this mean, especially now that we have so many people in the western states protected from arrest for medical marijuana? How do these numbers keep going up?
That's a great question. And I really am going to be interested to see in the next couple of years where these numbers fall, because we now, in 2011, we had the first full year of true decriminalization in the state of California. So in theory, there should be a significant reduction in the number of arrests in California. We had true decriminalization enacted in Connecticut for half of the year. We hope to see some reduction in the number of arrests in New York City, at least over the second half of the year. And it's going to be interesting to see if these statutory changes in states like California and Connecticut, and some of these guideline changes in cities like New York City, which we know is the marijuana arrest capital of the world, are really making a difference in these raw numbers. They should be, but if these arrest numbers are holding firm, it's really going to be disappointing. As you pointed out, right now we have record numbers of Americans that are legally protected under state law, but it's not taking a bite out of the overall arrest totals. Does that simply mean there's more people using marijuana that could be subject to arrest? Does it mean law enforcement is making a more concerted effort to arrest people, or are they going to a different pool to arrest people? I don't know the answer, but I'm curious to see how these numbers shake out over the next year or so.
Yeah, and we're speaking with Paul Armentano, the Deputy Director of NORML, and author of the Cannabis and Cannabinoids, the medical review that we have up online at our main website at normal.org. Emerging Clinical Applications. There we go. I knew I could remember it. Definitely check that out. If you haven't gotten a copy of that pamphlet, it's got everything you need to know as far as the scientific research on the medical uses. It's great for making the case. And speaking of those medical users, and we referenced it in our last story there, number 4 story, over 1 million Americans now use cannabis legally under state law, between 1 million to 1.5 million, according to data compiled by NORML. But it's quite a difference when we look between the states as to the percentage of people covered by these medical marijuana laws. What do these numbers tell you as far as the people being covered by medical marijuana, and does breaking 1 million represent some sort of turning point in the public's imagination about this?
I think it represents a turning point in some of the states where we have these large patient populations, in states like California and states like Colorado, where the general public is aware that there is this subpopulation that's now becoming rather significant that is using cannabis in a way that is not harmful to the public's overall health or well-being, that this is no longer should be treated as a criminal justice problem. This is really just a social phenomenon. I think it carries tremendous political weight and symbolic force for states like Colorado and California to simply accept the fact that adults can use cannabis responsibly. And we see the fact that the public understands that in these states. So that's where I think it's really making the greatest difference. The genie's out of the bottle in these places. It's not going to go back.
Yeah, absolutely. And the effect of that, what I'm seeing, comes in our number 3 story from the Gallup organization, which has been polling on the question of legalizing marijuana. A very simple question: should the adult use of marijuana be made legal? And that in that poll, for the first time in 2011, in October, we received a 50% of Americans believe that marijuana ought to be legalized for adult use. And these poll numbers keep rising for legalization. Do you want to put on do you want to get your crystal ball out, make any predictions? I mean, how high is this going to go before we can finally see legalization in a state or two?
Well, as Vivian McPeak says, we had to reach critical mass to end this critical mess, and certainly, that's true. But I think what's even more important in that Gallup poll was not just hitting 50%, but this was the first time ever in the poll that more people responded that they supported legalization than responded, no, I don't support legalization. So we now have a plurality. More Americans support legalization than don't. That has never been the case as long as Gallup's been asking this question. And I think that is really carries a lot of significance. And you do this better justice than I ever could. You had a chart, Russ, that you put together shortly after this Gallup, the most recent Gallup poll came out, showing that we have achieved gains in public opinion in every single demographic that Gallup breaks out, whether it's support among Republicans, whether it's support among those aged 65 and older, whether it's support among women. In every single demographic, more people today say they support marijuana legalization than did even 5-6 years ago. So it's a consistent, overall, overwhelming trend in favor of ending prohibition.
Yeah, the only demographic I could find in which the support had not gone up was former drug czars. That was it.
Exactly.
Jeez. All right. Number 2 story from 2011 with Paul Armentano here looking behind the headlines. Members of Congress introduced the first bill since 1937 to legalize cannabis. Now, I imagine the mainstream folks out there didn't hear much about this, probably died upon arrival in committee, but talk about the significance of actually getting the legislation introduced and co-sponsored.
Sure, this was a big deal, and it was a big story even in the press for a good week or so when the bill was dropped. And the media showed real interest in the story. CNN covered it, for instance. It put the drug warriors back on their heels. Bill Bennett was out talking about it and, of course, opposing it. The drug czar felt he had to say something about it. Once again, symbolically, this is very important. We can talk about the public being ready for change, but there has to be some vehicle of change in Washington, D.C., and this year we had it. NORML collaborated with a number of drug law reform groups to help draft this bill, which in many ways mimicked the way we ended alcohol prohibition. It simply said, it's a very simple bill, all of about 1.5 pages. It simply takes the federal government out of the marijuana law enforcement business. It doesn't legalize marijuana per se. It simply says that the federal government is no longer going to enforce prohibition. In other words, if a state wants to continue enforcing marijuana prohibition, that's their problem. They can go ahead and do that. But if a state like California or Washington or Colorado says, hey, we've had enough of this failed policy, we're just not going to do it anymore, we're going to regulate marijuana like alcohol, then they would have the freedom to do so. It's actually a terrific bill. It's going to carry over into 2012, so people can still contact their representatives about this bill, and they ought to be. This is a vehicle to begin the conversation between the constituent and their member of Congress, and it's your ability to say to them, hey, there is now a vehicle before you that could end this entire federal prohibition conflict. Where do you stand on it?
Mm-hmm. All right. And let's wind up our countdown of the top 10 events in marijuana for 2011. And what do you know? We made number 1. I wonder how that happened. But NORML sues to halt the government's prosecution of medical cannabis providers. This, of course, the U.S. attorneys in California have engaged in this crackdown, the threatening letters to landlords, the IRS going after people, ATF, DEA, IRS. If it's got 3 letters, it's coming after you for marijuana these days. And I think the argument they're making here, as far as the constitutional arguments, are pretty fascinating. Tell folks what this idea of estoppel is, as far as trying to stop this crackdown.
Well, basically, this idea of estoppel is the notion that one is engaged in activities that have led a person to reasonably believe that what they were doing was legal. And in this case, the attorneys are arguing that the federal government has sent mixed messages regarding the medical distribution and providing of marijuana in these states that allow it. It very publicly said we're not going to go after individuals that are compliant with the laws of their states. They put out a memo from the Attorney General to that effect. And more so, there was a federal legal case that involved a dispensary in California that maybe more so than any other dispensary in the state of California was compliant with the laws of the state of California. And during those court proceedings, attorneys for the dispensary said, hey, the federal government, the Obama administration, you've issued these memos. It seems to imply that you're going to take a hands-off approach to individuals like my clients here that are compliant with state law, do you really intend to do that going forward? And the federal government said, yes, we do. We stand by what we said in this memo. And then, of course, about 2 years go by and the federal government reverses course, issues a new memo that says we didn't really mean what we said in those other memos, and then says even if you are compliant with the laws of your state, if you engage in certain activities, specifically the distribution of marijuana to other parties, we're going to come after you. And this idea of estoppel says, no, you can't have it both ways. You can't imply to people that their activities were accepted under the law and then turn around and bust them and prosecute them for those same activities.
Right. It's what some people would think of as entrapment. It's not exactly legally the same thing we're talking about, but it's that idea that you were given the notion by authority that what you're doing was okay, and they can't use that to lure you into committing crimes and then bust you for those crimes. And it's an interesting suit based on some 9th, 10th, and 14th Amendment arguments. And of course, in 2012, we will keep you posted on all the developments as it continues. Paul Armentano is Normal's deputy director and lives in the Bay Area of California. We will see you at the next event, whichever it might be. Thanks for coming on, Paul.
Of course, anytime, Russ.
All right, we come back. We'll talk you into Toker Talk Radio after this.
You're listening to Normal Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Cannabis, pot,
just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech? Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana.
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
Don't think you smoked marijuana.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
Or you used to smoke marijuana.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Well, what do you know, folks? We went so long with Paul Armentano, we ran out of time. Oh, my goodness. Doesn't mean I'm still not going to rant. We'll just take it into hour 2 in Toker Talk Radio. So if you're checking us out live, we will be out there ranting about the recent AP smear piece on Portland's own Paul Stanford, the head of the THCF, the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation. We'll talk all about that in hour 2 and take your calls at 971-533-7111. For Cannabis Carry, Liz Calico, Brian the Red, and Paul Armentano, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers. Also want to thank our sponsors, Weedmaps.com, Stealth-Products.com. Check them out on the web.
This is Normal Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.
Who is it?
It's me, Dave. Open up, man. I got the stuff.
Who is it?
It's me, Dave, man.
Who?
It's Dave, man. Open up. I think the cops saw me come in here.
Who is it?
It's Dave, man.
You're listening to the Normal Network, where the time is 4:20, 24/7, 365.
Hey, everybody, welcome. It is 5 o'clock in the Pacific time zone, 8 o'clock Eastern. It's time for Toker Talk Radio. You can toke, you can talk, you can toke, or talk, you can toke, and talk, because we're going to talk about toke. That's what we do at Toker Talk Radio. We got Wiz Khalico hanging out here.
Toke, 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 toke.
Toke, 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 toke. And we got Cannabis Carrie hanging out. How you doing, Carrie? She's probably got to push a bunch of buttons to get back with us.
Yes, I'm here. Stupid buttons.
Aloha.
Aloha. And mahalo for what a wonderful show, Russ.
Oh, thank you so much. And Brian the Red's over the engineer mic.
Hola, everybody.
So we're having ourselves a
And
good time.
he sure helped us in the post-production, didn't he?
No doubt. One of the things, I've been trying to record Toker Talk Radio, because now we're not going to do a podcast of it, but we're going to replay it. So it's part of that 6-hour replay block. You can hear both hours of Normal Show Live. You miss them, you can catch them 6 hours from now, right? So one of the problems I had is every time I tried to record this, I'm using Audacity, and every time I tried to record it, it would go for about an hour and 20 minutes, and then it would just crap, just die, just lock up, right? And, well, that sucks. I've got to record 2 hours here, right? And so Brian's like, well, dude, are you recording to the RAM? Are you recording to the memory? Are you recording to hard drive? I'm like, yeah. What? Didn't you say it that way? Didn't you say dude?
Something like that.
Yeah. There was a dude in there, wasn't there? There had to be a dude in there.
I was like, I think I said, but dude, are you writing? Yeah, no.
It was something like that. Come on now. Yeah. So anyway, we took a look at that, and so I got these SATA drives, these serial drives. They're fast as hell. And he says, just turn off the RAM recording, and it'll record straight to the hard drive, and everything will be fine. And god dang if it ain't true, man. It's just, it's cooking right along. So thank you.
Well, you think so. It's not 20 after yet, Russ, in all respects.
That's right. Maybe what's happening,
till the end.
the computer's crapping out at 20 after because it wants a smoke break.
I think that's what's going on. That happened to quite a few Ivory Island hours when we were doing the Ganja John show and Ivory Island hour back to back. And we kept, because we did that too, we tried to record 2 hours and we would just crap out. And then we lost like 5 episodes.
Oh, I know. That's a bummer. But hey, speaking of, I told the Different View ladies this last night, but there are now podcast feeds for A Different View, for the Ganja John show, for Ivory Island Hour. Basically, every live show that we're going to produce here, I've got the podcast feed up at Normal on their RSS.
Nice.
With links at the Normal AV store, which is normal.org/AV. That's where you can get the podcast iTunes feeds for us.
Excellent.
So get your cast feed up there. I'll get you the XML file so you can update it.
So I can just upload them to that then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm also saving the podcast on the audio server for Normal.
Awesome.
Now, you can still put them up on Podomatic if you want.
No, by all means. Get rid of that thing.
But what I can also do, too, is we can... the Stash blog is still going to exist, and the Stash blog is kind of going to be the blog of the Normal Network.
Yeah,
so I'll activate a posting account for you.
I still have one. I don't know if it's... I have one.
Okay, well...
From a long time ago when I did the Politicians on Pot.
That's right. Well, we can fix that up, and so when you do Ivory Island hours... Why are you wearing 2 sets of headphones?
Because I'm streaming CNN live on my laptop right now. So I'm wearing 2 headphones. One ear is going to you guys, and one ear is to Wolf Blitzer.
Oh, okay. Now that's got to mess up your brain.
No, dude, I'm doing just fine.
See what cannabis can do for you?
Weren't you going to do a rant?
I will get to the rant. I rant after the break.
You got to get prepared for a rant.
That's right. But anyway, you can get those podcast feeds up there at normal.org now for Ganja John Show, Ivory Island Hour, A Different View, And also, it looks like we're going to have a Subcool show.
Hey, what about Herb Thrasher?
Oh yeah, that's and Herb Thrasher, right? Normal Rocks with Herb Thrasher's up there as well.
Herb
So
Thrasher.
four produced shows. So there's that. But it looks like we're going to get a Subcool show.
Yes, Weed Nerd.
Looks like it's going to be live.
Yes.
Here's the deal, though, is like he emailed me today. He's like, because I said, well, I've got a Tuesday slot, a Thursday slot, and a Saturday slot. He goes, oh, can I do Wednesday? Because that's my coming into town and running around day. I go, well, Kaliko's already got Wednesday at 8.
Oh, shit.
So he says, well, maybe I can do Thursday. I'm like, oh, well, Thursday we're going to put Gone to John. But when John gets back, we'll talk to him.
Yeah.
Between the three of y'all,
Figure it out. And I mean, by all means, I'm willing to move for Subcool. I mean,
but Irie Island on Wednesday makes sense, though.
Yeah, right.
Irie
Reggae, yeah, man.
Wednesday
Let's keep it going. Get the vibes flowing.
So Tuesday or Thursday. So John and Sub got to figure out who wants to be Tuesday, who wants to be Thursday. I think John works on Thursdays because it's the whole Groovin' Thursday, and he's got kind of a hip hop feel to the show.
I dig that too.
So I'd love to have Subby on Tuesdays, but I don't think that fits his schedule. Maybe Saturday nights, but Saturday nights, man, you're busy. You want to do stuff on Saturday nights. So I don't know. We'll get it figured out because we really would like to have a Subcool show here. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, man. Get some more grow shows on the network, definitely.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And want to take advantage of being able to have a live call-in grow show where we can have, and this weekend I'm picking up the new HD cameras. So this camera here, because everybody's saying, hey, how come Kaliko's black shirt looks blue? It's because these cameras suck.
Because I'm poor, guys. Get off my back.
Can't afford black shirts. No, that's for Simon Cowell. But no, we'll get more of these high-def cameras like the one I'm looking at right now. We're going to have 6 more of these. So everybody will have their own high-def shot. Going to pick them up this weekend. I'll be up in Seattle getting those. So check that out. Hey, when we come back, we're going to take a little break here. When we come back, though, we are going to talk about this AP hit piece on Paul Stanford here from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, written by Nigel Duara of the Associated Press. It's been going all around. All of the blogs, the Weed blog, Toke of the Town, all of the activist blogs are talking about it. All of the activist lists that I'm on are emailing about it. And I have some inside knowledge on this as well. But we're going to keep it respectful, keep it civil. We'll be right back after this.
Weedmaps.com. I'm Radical Russ from Normal. In my job as outreach coordinator, I travel every month, and when I'm on the road, I need a fast, accurate way to find the medical marijuana dispensaries in the area. So I turn to Weedmaps.com. Weedmaps.com has the best dispensary locator online or on your mobile device. Search by zip code or let Weedmaps find you, and in seconds you'll have the addresses, phone numbers, and customer service reviews for the medical marijuana dispensaries in the local area. Weedmaps.com also has a section devoted to helping you find a doctor who understands and recommends medical marijuana under your state's law. You can even check prices on the Medical Marijuana Stock Exchange. Coming soon, you'll even be able to find the listings of normal attorneys and chapters, local head shops and grow shops, and the best weed-friendly businesses. Weedmaps.com has the information you need to be an informed cannabis consumer. Visit Weedmaps.com today, a proud sponsor of the Normal Network.
Inhaling deeply of the sacred smoke.
Watch the clock to smoke your pot. You should know you're not alone. If your grass is like molasses hydro-grown, that gets you stoned. If you're counting the hours, you're watching the minutes for that special time when